Thank you. Hi, my name is Sarah Hagan and I work for Redfin. So I feel like I need to let people know that I don't know anything about monitoring whatsoever. People keep asking me to speak at conferences and I have to tell them I am an experimental psychologist. Like we monitor people, but it's creepy when we monitor people. So I think that's why my current title at Redfin is data scientist. And I was really hired to experiment on people, which also sounds really creepy. But what I do is try to optimize behavior of our employees. So how can we change the environment to make employees like what they do or be more productive at what they do? How can we have shared tools that are making people better? But I'm pretty much like the dude in the back, and so I'm following people and I'm writing notes and trying to create a better environment. Now, it's creepy when you say you monitor people, but I think my real talk should have been people monitoring at Redfin. We do predictive people analytics, but I'm not going to talk about that today. What I'm going to talk about is how you should be monitoring more than just your platform or more than just your website or more than just what you're selling. So first I'm going to talk about how we use data at a large aggregate level to develop a hiring model to grow as a startup. Second, I'm going to talk about how we use data to monitor our employees. And then third, I'm going to talk about how we've been able to create a culture where both engineers and then our agents monitor each other. So before I get into that, if you're not familiar with Redfin, you may have heard of our website, it's just redfin.com, or our mobile app, and most people are aware of that. It's similar to Trulia or Zillow. I would like to note that we actually pioneered map-based home searches first, but we're a full-service brokerage. That means that we actually have people on the ground who are licensed agents to help you buy or sell your home. So it's different than Zillow or Trulia, where they're actually buying ads. Agents buy ads to be on the side of Zillow or Trulia. Our agents work for us, and we have these really neat technology to help people buy or sell their home quicker, and we actually can offer reduced fees. So first I want to talk a little bit about how we've monitored our hiring. To put this in perspective, we're still, we're like a 10-year-old startup. We call ourselves a startup. We're a private company, and we started in 2008 is when we got our first agents. We're currently in 81 markets, which means we actually have people on the ground in each of those markets. So because we're a full-service brokerage, it means we actually have people wherever you can look up listings on redfin.com. For instance, Austin, Texas. If you want to buy a house in Austin, Texas, you can go ahead, log on, and see all of the listings because we're tapped straight into the multiple listing service of Austin. You can't go into Waco, Texas and try to move there if you'd want to because we don't have any agents on the ground. So we've actually had to hire a bunch of people across the United States who are good at what they do in different areas, and it's been really interesting. So in 2008, when we first got employees, we had a whopping 6 agents. And we've actually grown exponentially since then. By the end of 2016, the top of my graph's cut off, but there's no numbers, so it was purposely vague. We have over 600 agents by the end of 2016. So that means we've had to hire really, really fast. So we've had to create algorithms to be able to monitor the external housing market to make sure that we're moving in the right locations. And this sounds kind of silly, right? You're like, surely everybody uses data when they're opening up a new office. And I was actually behind some men earlier today, and sorry to call you out, who were talking about how they were opening up a new office in Dublin, Ireland. They were really excited because they were going to open up a new office for their company. And that's great if Dublin, Ireland has a lot of people who are doing what your product needs to do. But with real estate, since it's really important to care about that external housing market, we try to monitor it really, really closely. And we have publicly shared data in case you want to see it. So one of the things we monitor, oh crap. Nah, I tried. So the first graph, which you can't tell, is months of supply. So how how many months of supply of houses are on the market. And that sounds silly, but if we can go back a little bit, you can see it starts up really high in 2012 and then gets really low in 2016. And if you're familiar with the housing market, like in Portland, Jason, it's pretty bad. In fact, it's extremely hard to buy a house here because everybody's outbidding themselves because there's not enough supply. Similarly, the houses are going really fast. The number of days that houses are staying on the market now is teeny, and that 40 is national. This is national data. If you look at it based on where you live in the United States, you can actually see how bad or good the housing market is, if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. We also look at how expensive the houses are that we're selling. So like Nicole said a little bit earlier, the bottom line in most companies is to make money. And we make more money if we sell houses that are a little bit more expensive. Now, we're not going to push you to buy a house that you can't handle, but we're not going to move into a market where the housing market is really low and nobody's buying or selling houses and all of the houses are $60,000. Sounds nice. And we actually really care about the neighborhood. So one of the things that we've been particularly really good at is not just looking nationally, but looking individually and being able to see where we should move at the right time. So we've got this like crazy algorithm that's saying based on the budget and the number of head count of people that we should be hiring and the external housing market, where should we move? So somebody decides we are going to move into this market. And I'm going to use Waco, Texas, because I know we're not there, and that's where I went to grad school. So we're going to move into Waco, Texas. It's going to be great. We're going to get all of that fixer-upper HGTV money. But how do we translate that from the people who made that decision, which are usually our executives or our financial forecasters, to the people actually doing the hiring, or even the people who should be monitoring the hiring, like our recruiters? Well, we have created this really awesome staffing spreadsheet. Now, you can't actually see the title. It says Staffing for Monitorama. I put up fake data because I'm not sure how open we are to this data, but you can kind of see it's a little blurry. On the left side is all of the markets that we're in, a few demographic variables that are totally irrelevant, and then we can actually track how many people we have in each location, where they're going, so if they're transferring, anybody who we hired who hasn't started yet, and then people who are leaving soon. And this looks pretty manual, and it's definitely more manual than your guys' monitoring dashboards that I've been seeing and people have been demoing. But what it does is it creates a shared tool for everybody to be able to use that data, which is really important. So we believe that it's important to hire the right people at the right times in the right locations. And this way, we actually can go job by job and say, all right, we opened up new headcount in Austin, Texas, because everybody's moving there and everybody's leaving the Bay Area. So we're going to increase our presence in Austin because we know that we've had lots of demand and people have been on the website searching for houses in Austin, Texas, and our agents are just overloaded. Similarly, when we reduce headcount, maybe people aren't buying in South New Jersey, we can go ahead, reduce the headcount there, and then our budget people know, our finance people know, and our recruiters know. Also, most of the hiring managers who work for Redfin are actually, were at one point, if not still, doing deals, so they were agents. Which is interesting because they aren't the most open to using data. So we've tried to give them tools that they feel comfortable with, that they can actually monitor their hiring, that's useful to them and not overwhelming, which is a key. So you're thinking probably like, well, I don't hire, sorry. Or why don't you just pull what traditional real estate or what Uber and Lyft do? So typically when people need to hire a lot of people and they have an on-demand service, they call it the gig economy right now, people hire a bunch of independent contractors. So you don't actually work for Uber, you are an independent contractor and you don't actually get paid until you pick somebody up and then drive them someplace and then drop them off. And you get paid per event. Same thing with Airbnb, same thing with Lyft and Postmates. in all of these delivery service websites. And the interesting thing about that is it makes sense. It's actually how real estate has been functioning since the 21st century, or sorry, the early 20th century. So you can't see, they're all just, different US brokerages. And how brokerages usually work is somebody who wants to be an agent says, okay, I want to work for Keller Williams. So to be Sarah at Keller Williams, I'm going to pay the brokerage to use their name and use their services. It's usually a couple $1,000s, what they call a desk fee, and then I promise to pay them what is called a brokerage split. So they actually make commission when I make commission. So I don't make money unless I sell you a house. I usually make somewhere between 2 and 3% depending on the market, and then my brokerage actually takes that money and says, you're welcome for getting to use my name. And so we're sitting around thinking in 2006 when we started, do people really want to trust the salespeople that aren't making money until they sell you a house? It's inherently biased, right? Like, the only way that your agent is making money is if they sell a house. So we said, it seems really weird that you would create a culture in which your company or your employees don't actually work for you. So we decided to do something a little bit different, and our agents are actually full-time employees. So they're not independent contractors, and that is surprising because you would think the on-demand service requires contractors. And it doesn't. And you're thinking, this cannot be a profitable business model. And, just like Nicole said earlier, most goals are ultimately to make money. And we've actually been able to use internal data along with looking and really caring about the market to make this optimal. So we know how to measure our agents so that it makes sense to have employees and not contractors. So one of the things that we do is we pay a salary, which is a little bit more like a stipend. It's just something that should cover the bills on a monthly basis. We also pay benefits, so they have full benefits. In fact, my benefits are exactly the same as anybody who's an agent. And then we pay the MLS, the multiple listing service dues. The cool part about that, though, is that we can actually get data from the multiple listing service and be able to estimate how much that total compensation per agent should be. So I'm actually mining this huge data source of all of these house listings to make sure that my total compensation for my agent actually makes sense for people to work with us and not with this external brokerage and still be happy and not too crazy. So most of our agents love that stipend salary and the benefits, and we actually push it over by bonusing based on customer satisfaction. And that's where the creepy monitoring comes in. So I stole this from Nicole. I don't see her right now, but you can't tell. I have an arrow at the bottom that says stolen from Nicole Forsgren. But this is her slide, and she said, metrics inform our incentives and shape our behavior. And we really decided, what do we care the most about? Is it selling the most houses? It's helping people sell houses. And one of the ways that we help people sell houses is making sure that we're giving them the best service and not pushing them into doing something that they don't want to do. So this is Matthew, one of our Portland agents. I picked him because he looks totally Portlandy, doesn't he? Right. And he's awesome. So say you love Monitorama so much that you're like, man, I got to move to this city. And I'm sure everybody who lives in Portland is like, don't do it. But if you want... But if you want to, you can. So you can go online to our website and actually click on an agent and not be sent some sort of lead generation like you would at other websites. You can actually go in and read all of Matthew's 66 reviews. Now, that's really neat because none of them are hidden. So there's a little bit of the, why would you only track one metric? I think Nicole mentioned that a little bit earlier. Well, we know that it can be gamed, which is also why we publish everything. So at the end of every closed transaction, and Matthew's kind of a baller looking at his reviews. So after every closed transaction, the customer gets a 1-question NPS survey. And if you're unfamiliar with NPS, it's really Net Promoter Score. It's on a scale of 0 to 10. 9s and 10s are promoter, so people who rate you that are usually saying, I love Redfin without being prompted. Anybody who rates you a 7 or an 8, we call those passives. Those are people who generally think positively of you but aren't going around like tooting your horn. And then 0 to 6s are called detractors, and those are usually people who don't have good things to say about you and may actually tell people unprompted not great things. So we totally cheat and just divide it by 2 and have Matthew's score in stars up at the top. And then you can actually read each of his reviews. And the basis of his pay, and it sounds scary, but it's not, is based on how he's rated at the end of the transaction. This purpose is twofold. It's a little bit to ensure that we care enough about customer service that it's not just lip service. We're actually telling the customer that it's important to us so much that we're going to pay their agent like that. Similarly, our agents recognize that we're not playing around. We're not the type of brokerage who's just going to sell you a house. In fact, plenty of our clients look for houses for multiple years and they still haven't decided what they want. And that's okay. They don't actually have to sign with us. We'll still keep touring them if they're not ready to buy. But the customer service really matters. Second, it's also to let the customer monitor us. And that's really interesting and not something that you typically see in real estate. It's surprising because most agents that you talk to who are external are really nervous about letting their customer rate them because they think that the customer is not smart enough to understand all of the stuff that has to go behind buying or selling a house. And that's why we believe in full transparency, really letting people know what they're getting into and who they're getting it into with. We can also do something really cool, which is, this is our actual NPS, by the way, for 2016. So these are actual numbers from the beginning of the year to current, and we're sitting at about a 90% average NPS, which is pretty awesome. So we have a Tableau dashboard, and it's not always this nice, but we have a Tableau dashboard where we can actually see and monitor how well are we doing aggregately and actually by agent. So you can actually see that too. But you can see Bridget here, who is sitting at a 90% NPS, and Brooke, who's right under her, who's at 100% NPS. You can see how many total closed deals that they have, so how many total people who took the survey, which is pretty neat. And we can also use this as an early warning system if we see enough people getting too many detractors. Now, I know that this may sound like a huge Redfin pitch, and I don't really mean it to be. What I'm really trying to do is make you think outside of the box. So yes, it may be really important for you to look at number of bugs, and I get that, right? Metric of how many times can we, do we get notified that this bug is happening and that we fix it is a great metric. But it's also really important to look beyond and say, okay, what else are we doing? How do we want to make an impact? And what's important to our company? So, also tooting around horn, we're pretty awesome. So one of the other things that we do to make this cost-benefit analysis actually make more sense, not using these on-demand independent contractors, is to measure how much people are working. And that's extremely hard to do in anybody's everyday job, let alone when people are all kind of doing different things. So we've created something that we call our agent busyness, or our agent load. And I didn't screenshot that because it doesn't make a lot of sense in context of how we show it to the agents, but you can kind of think of it as this. It's like a sliding scale to make sure that depending on how many events they're doing, where they are in the deal process, where each customer is and how many customers they have, how overloaded they are. And it's a really simple, a little bit of math and a little bit of magic and a lot of guessing. We've been able to figure out what those weights are to be able to make sure that how busy agents feel is connected to this number that we've, in essence, made up. Now the neat part is we've actually changed this capacity too. So not everybody's on a 1 to 100 scale where 100 means you're overloaded and like 80 is great. It depends on where you are in your career and who you are. And so if you're someone who just wants to be low key and not spend a lot of time, with customers touring at Sunday night at 9 p.m., you can close your calendar and decide that you don't want to take those customers. Managers can actually see too where everybody's load and capacity is, which is pretty cool because managers should be monitoring their agent performance and making sure that nobody's getting overloaded and that there's enough demand. Now sometimes we have agents who feel like there's not enough demand and they aren't making enough money because they don't have enough customers, and that's usually a sign that we either hired too many people or we need to ramp up advertisements because the housing market's pretty good right now. And that's really interesting because our market managers, people who are traditional agents but they're out in the field managing each individual market, can actually do all of that monitoring for us. So we're creating tools that are helping them be able to translate that metric to their agent. So we monitor performance. We talked a little bit about that. Customer satisfaction, the agent load, but we've also monitored our culture. Nicole also, her talk was the only one I kind of understood because everybody else was talking about monitoring. Culture matters, and we really, really agree. If you care about culture, you're measuring and monitoring it. So we do have typical employee metrics like everybody's HR department probably has, like retention and turnover or number of features you shipped, but we're also pretty intentional about monitoring our culture. So most people monitor their culture by like a yearly employee engagement survey, and they say like, yep, people still work here, so. Well done. Yeah, and I get it, right? Like qualitative data matters, but we're extremely interested in trying to understand how we can connect people working on these tools to create a better culture, not just measure it. And sometimes qualitative data really matters. So you can't see the title of this, but you can totally tell what it is. So the title is Allow Multiple Agents to be Assigned to One Customer. So we have basically an internal Reddit, except people are nice, where, just saying, you use Reddit and you know who I'm talking about. We have an internal board where people can go in and say, there's a problem with this tool. This tool is not working for me out in the field. So in this case, somebody said, right now, we only have the ability to assign one agent to each customer. This causes a problem when a client is buying and selling in 2 different locations. Why does our tool not allow the availability of 2 different agents? So it's really neat because agents can actually go in, and actually non-agents can go in as well. Anybody with a redfin.com email address can go in and actually upvote each idea. So on the far left, you can see 116 upvotes. And then people can actually add on or leave comments as well. And this one has 26 comments. So it was something that people agreed. Like, but I'm buying a house in Boston because I'm selling my house in San Francisco, and yet you want to give me an agent in San Francisco for both of those transactions. It doesn't make sense. And so an engineer says, you're right, we've had this on our backlog and we didn't realize how much it was affecting people. We're going to put this in our planned column. It's going to come out in 2015. And then as soon as it comes out, sure enough, Evan, another one of our engineers, said, yep, you'll hear more about it in our release mail, but it's already shipped. And then you probably can't see it. Oh, you can. Then it gets tagged with a little completed sign. Now, this sounds really basic, and it is, but the cool part is it's getting people onto this internal Reddit-like platform to talk about some of the issues that they're having. So it may not be measuring culture, but it's definitely monitoring how much agents are using these tools and vice versa, how much engineers are listening to these agents. Our engineers are doing and building great products that are trying to help agents buy or sell houses. And actually help the customer on the side too, of knowing when they need to put in what. You don't even have to want to buy or sell a house to use Redfin. You don't have to use an agent to use Redfin. You can go to the website and be able to use it just fine. But we are constantly trying to build great internal tools because our customers can actually be internal too. So the whole time I'm talking, I'm sure you guys kind of tuned out a little bit because I was talking all about real estate and nothing really about monitoring, and I get it. But what I do think is important is monitoring your people practices, whether that's communication with an agent and an engineer, whether it's your culture and what people are doing, because I'm all for engagement surveys as long as there's action out of it. Whether it is looking at your hiring practice and being really intentional about moving. If you're an engineering company and everybody is doing this mass exodus away from San Francisco, then start thinking about where is everybody moving to, and then move to one of those places, unless it's Seattle. Then stay away. Just kidding. And I just want you to think beyond the traditional productivity and come up with a good way to measure your people. Now, I know that some of you may not be in that position to be able to influence all of that, but you do have the ability to have conversations about it. And I think monitoring your people ultimately makes people happier and puts them in a better place, and then actually reduces all the stuff that you do actually measure, like attrition. Go monitor people.